Hey everybody, Scott Weather here. We're going to do a Wednesday random kind of Photoshoppy thing. So what I've been doing is playing a lot with MidJourney, and that's fine. I mean, everybody can do that. But does that make you a great artist? No, it makes you a person who can put together a sentence that works its way through the AI and may generate an amazing image. But wouldn't it be cool if we could take that image and then combine it with our own work, our own photography, whether it's something you shot with a cell phone or something that you take in your studio. I'm a full-time photographer, so I have a lot of images to work from and a lot of clients, a lot of faces. So I thought I would start there and kind of take some faces and work it into the imagery that I've worked so far. So I'm going to show you some imagery that I did probably about 2 weeks ago or so, and I really like the way it came out. This is the older version of MidJourney, so that it's not as good as faces, but again, we don't really care about the face. We care about the rest of the image. What we're going to do is we're going to take a photo that I had shot in my studio, and we're going to combine it with that image in Photoshop. So this is not a entry-level Photoshop stream. This is not a I mean, it's kind of a tutorial. I'm going to walk through what I'm doing, but I'm not going to kind of take every tiny little step. So if you're pretty good at Photoshop, then I think you'll find this is very comfortable, and there will be a lot of techniques here you might learn. But if you have questions, throw them in the comments and I can stop and discuss it a bit. But I do a live stream on Tuesdays, I say yesterday, where I do a lot more tutorial stuff. And if you have a chance to see me in person, I speak around the nation at different conventions for photography, where I do advanced Photoshop, beginner Photoshop, and so on. So I'll be heading to Oakland next, or Portland, I should say Portland. I have, what else do I have? Florida, Austin, and there's one other one in there that I'm forgetting at the moment. But over the next couple of months, I'll be traveling quite a bit, so I'll see you guys out and about. Annis is asking, don't want to miss the talk about what's new with version 3. Let me talk about that briefly. So version 3 MidJourney came out yesterday, or very late in the morning there, early in the morning. And what they changed was a couple things. First of all, it's much better at faces now. It still can't deal with hands or fingers very well, but that's okay. But it works so much better with faces. Now, I had a pretty good strategy for faces to begin with, and I discussed that on Monday's stream when I talked about version 3 and some of the things that had changed. But my methods were pretty good. Like, I had a strategy and it worked, and it works very well now with version 3. So if you want a lot more in-depth on that, there's a whole hour of me digging through the engine and showing you what I've learned there. The other two flags are stylize, which has a default value of like 1200 or something like that. And it can go up to 60,000 or it can down to 625, which is effectively off. And what that does is it allows the engine to take liberties with what you've typed in. So a value of 60,000 means basically it's going to ignore mostly what you put in there and kind of roll some dice. And a value of 625 means it's turned off. And that would be hyphen stylize space and then a number. I'm not going to really talk about that much here today. The other one is quality, so dash quality, and quality can be a defaults to 1. And if you are paying and you're afraid you're going to be using a lot of your points throughout the month, you can set your quality to like 0.25, and that will use 1/4 of the points. You can set it to 5, which you use a lot more, but you'll get a much higher quality image and a lot more detail in through that. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you the image. I'm going to show you what I did to get the image. I'm going to show you the images, talk about my strategy, and then I'm going to dive into Photoshop with the photo of my friend Sabrina, and we're going to then put her face into one of these things. So I have a different camera, so you're not looking at the side of my head while I'm working here. That will show you my keyboard and my Wacom tablet, so if you're wondering what I'm doing, hopefully that will help. I did change the aspect ratio of that, so I'll have to adjust that when we get to Photoshop, but we'll do that in a second. So let's jump over to this thing here, and I'll just keep my head on the side here for a bit. Yeah, and if you like this video, please take a moment to click the like button. I mean, nobody does that, and it's kind of come on, people. It's like clapping, right? If you like it, clap. All right, so this is what I had done in MidJourney, and you can see there's quite a bit here. Let's talk about a bit about what I did kind of when I approached this. Is I went with a bit of the whole idea of redundancy or repetition. So the more often you mention something, the more often that MidJourney is going to find that you think that is important. So you can see there's a lot of things in here about details, luxury, elegance, ornate. Obviously, these are not exact duplicates of each other, but they help, like hyper detailed and ornate. Well, it's almost the same idea. Elite is interesting because it's more of a of a concept than a picture of something. Details, subtle go-to accents. Trending on ArtStation means it's going to look at ArtStation's kind of style of art. Think of that not as what's trending on ArtStation, but as a style of art. Kind of like when people say Octane Render or Unreal Engine or any of those V-Ray type of things. You are specifically looking for a look where, much like oil on canvas would be another extremely valid way to direct the engine to say kind of what you want the feel of the image to look like. So not that it's actually trending on ArtStation, but if you look at ArtStation and you get the idea of what trends on there, then you get the idea of what this is doing. I'm a big ArtStation fan. I've used ArtStation for a couple of years and I really like it. I've bought a lot of stuff off ArtStation. And then we have some people in here that it's using as inspiration. So I think names in here help a lot. It's going to look at that artist, especially Peter Moorbacher, who I'm a huge supporter of. In fact, I was and still am one of his patrons. So I support him each month by buying his goodies. So I have a deck of cards here, which I'll show you in a bit, which has some wonderful artwork on them. But I have a couple different things from him, including a pin and a bunch of stuff. So I'm a big fan of supporting the artists that I enjoy. And speaking of which, thanks to all the people who support this channel. You guys are awesome. And then Mandelbulb. If you're not familiar with Mandelbulb, it's a 3D fractal generation application, but it does it in real time. So you can kind of fly through your fractals and do things. I've overheated my video card more than one time using that application. And then you can see some other things here. A Persian rug. It's kind of an interesting idea. Biomechanical sculpture, female, white carved marble. Okay. So if I were to do this today in version 3, this would be a little bit different. I would approach this differently because I think a lot of this could be kind of inferred, and I would push it, knowing what I've learned now about making faces, I would push it toward a specific face. I would pick an actress, somebody who I found beautiful, and I would say, okay, this is kind of the face that I would like to have, so let's go with that. So that's kind of my strategy now. Now, version 3 obviously allows a lot more leniency in getting away with murder now, where version 2, you really had to push it. And chances are the eyes were going to be wonky anyway. But that's behind us now. The two things to keep track of here are, this is an upscaled max, okay? And then there's a light upscale redo. The difference between a max and an upscale redo is the max adds a lot of detail. And that detail tends to work toward painterly, which is kind of the default look and feel for the images in the engine. And that may or may not appeal to you, but that's what it's going to try and do. So as you upscale to max, you'll notice that it gets kind of an oil-based look to it. Now, light upscale redo, what that does is it takes and upscales the image. It's not quite as large. It's not quite 1500 pixels, as we'll see, but it does not go in and add all that little tiny detail. So it comes out a bit smoother, and both of these images are useful. So we want to kind of bring them both in because we may pick and choose what we're going to do with them. And I'm going to show you that strategy, but I want to talk about what I'm starting with. I want to start with both. I want the max upscale, and I want the light upscale, and then I want the photo. So we're gonna deal with this. I'm gonna start over in this whole image. I've done this image once, and who knows if it'll turn off the same way or not. We're just gonna find out. But I wanted to let you know what it is we're going in with and what that's gonna happen. By the way, I'm working on 2 different projects right now. I have a weekly AI art challenge, which we're gonna start. I'm following it on Twitter. So if you're not on Twitter or you're following me on Twitter, it's just my name, se.weiler. We're doing a weekly AI art challenge in there, and it's not just that you just generate with the AI and you're done. You may modify it when you're done. So I'm encouraging people to get in with Photoshop and do something, make it your own art. So there's that, and then we're going to actually look at doing our own on this program, where we're going to have some prizes and stuff. I'm actually going to talk to one of my sponsors and see if we can get a giveaway. So that'd be kind of fun. And the giveaway would be a print of what you did. So hanging on your wall, not like a random towel or whatever, but something that you could hang on your wall and say, this is art that I made. Obviously we want it to be art you made and not art you typed the prompt for. There's a difference there. Anyway, let's hop over here, and I'm going to again I have a Wacom tablet here. This is a medium Wacom tablet Intuos Pro. You don't need anything this insanely nice. Any tablet will do. I have pressure sensitivity turned off for what we're going to do today. Sometimes I leave that on, but not for what's going on now. And let me adjust the size of that because it is big. Sorry about that. I'm trying to accommodate everyone by moving stuff around here so everyone's happy. And it's even somebody complained about the jazz. Sorry, it's jazz because nobody hates jazz, right? So we'll stay with that. Okay, so turn this puppy on. All right, let's pop into the image here. So I want to show you what I have here. I have Sabrina's picture, and the goal here, when you're doing this type of thing, it is much easier if you have the photo that you're going to move everything into before you shoot the portrait, okay? Because the key to all of this is the lighting has to match. The lighting has to match. By the way, I was showing these Peter's Moorbacher cards here. I can't get them to look good at the camera here. But they have really great artwork on all these things. But yeah, really nice deck of cards from his Angelarium series that I bought. I also own one of his books. Anyway. So you can see I did not retouch the picture. I'm not going to worry about that yet because we may not need to retouch it as much as we would like if we did regular pictures. On top of that, we have two versions of this image. We have the full max redo, or the full max upscale, and you can see that it added a lot of stuff in here, and I'm not worried about that so much. But here's the light upscale redo, and you can see the difference between these two. So if you always wonder, what's that light upscale redo button do? Now you know. So you've got one and you got the other. Both are useful, but one is, I think, a little more useful than the other one. Now, I'm going to resize this image and crop this down a bit. I'm going to probably end up doing that later. Her face is much larger than it needs to be. This is 9,000 pixels, I think. Yeah, right around a little over 9,000 pixels. So we don't need it to be that large. You can print it on the side of a bus with that size. But I'm going to use this face, so I don't really need to upscale everything else to fit. Double clicking on the background to turn it into a regular layer. That way I can detach it from the background and move it up. So Control T to resize. Again, if you have questions on what I'm doing while I'm doing it, just pop in the comments there. All right, I am going to take and make this one the master. So we're going to take that one and we're going to crop around it. This way, this is because I don't want to try and increase the size of everything to fit this. This is the most detailed thing we have, and that's what we're going to start with. So we're just going to kind of crop the image in, so we can start here. Okay, and then we'll bring her face in, and we're just going to move it into position. Again, if you have questions as I'm working on this, feel free. I do Photoshop all day long, every day, so I move a bit fast. But if you have questions, I'm happy to help you on that. So I'm just looking to try and align her face roughly here, right? Something like that is good enough for me. Now, this is no longer a smart object or the background, so every time we resize it, it suffers. If you think you're going to have trouble with this and you want to not screw it up, then convert it to a smart object first. By doing this, then we may move it into position and rescale it and not worry about if we have to change it again later. So if we turn out we miss and we're like, oh, I would have made that a bit bigger, then we can do so. Probably a good strategy in this situation to do that kind of thing. I held down to my shift key because I'm using the legacy version. I've been using Photoshop for so long that I forget to hold down the shift key, and then they just recently changed it where you don't have to hold down the shift key. So I'm just kind of aligning her chin, her lips, and her eyes. So everything else I really don't care about. This is going to work. Again, it's art. We do what we want to do. We're done with it. It's ours. Something like this. It's good. I always try made a bone and marble emo melmoth. Have a pretty decent results. Awesome. Whoops. You know what I did? I'm an idiot. I made this smart object on a 50% image, so we'll just have to, I just went into the smart object and corrected it so that it's not 50% grayed out. I'm sitting there, what's the problem with that? Beverage break. This image is quite large, so take a bit. Okay, there we go. So now if we knock it down, we can see that it's all good. Now I'm just gonna put a mask on this and get rid of the whole thing, and then come back and just kind of sketch in what the parts I need. So I just need like this area here, right? Something like that. Now I don't necessarily want this this crunchiness of this whole thing all over this. So let's go back to this one. This one has to be resized so that it fits the same as the other one. Again, it's going to be softer because I increased the size of it, but I'm okay with that. What I want to do is I kind of want to start with the soft version and then work our way toward the crunchier one. This is just a strategy for this image. I mean, who knows if it's going to work? We're going to find out. I'm going to expose a little bit more of her skin here. Oops. I meant to hit the B button and hit the C button by mistake. So something like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, we're just looking for her skin right now. All right, so I want to do something like this. Now, what I need to do is I need to correct this color because this obviously isn't correct. But here's the thing we want to remember. The lighting here works with the lighting of the image. So when I lit her, I had this image in mind. I'd already researched it. I'd already gotten the AI to kick it out. And from that point forward, then it was a matter of simply making this work that way. So if you're trying to take an existing image that you already have a photo of and then slam it into a piece of AI art, just remember the shadows have to work. Otherwise, believability is difficult. Now we can relight it, but that is a lot of work. And if you're not very good at Photoshop, you're going to find that your result is meh. So don't do it. Okay, so let's first thing we're gonna do is we have to fix the color and the brightness. So there's 3 things you have to do whenever you work with the composite. You have saturation, which is the total amount of color you have. You have a value, which is how dark or how light it is. Okay, and then we have the actual chroma or the color. We have to correct all 3 of those in order for these to match. So let's start with the black and white, or the value. Now, in order to do that in Photoshop, you need to look at it in black and white. Now, a lot of people are going to do this hue and saturation adjustment layer and pull this down like this. This does not actually work. A lot of people will tell you this is how you do it, and you're like, well, what are you talking about? It's got this to work. It doesn't work. This is a lie. Let me prove it to you. I'm just going to put a blank layer in here. And let's put some color on it real quick. So I'm just going to grab a green. I'm going to add let's go with a blue. Let's go with a yellow. We'll go with a red. Okay. So if we have all of these colors and I go in this hue saturation and I pull the saturation out, what will be the brightest color? So I'll give you a moment to think about it. You're like, well, obviously yellow would be brighter than blue, right? Of course it will be. Well, if I pull the saturation down on this, they're all the same color. So this tool uses what's called hue, saturation, and lightness. It is not actually the mode used by the majority of Photoshop, which is hue, saturation, and brightness. So do not use this to make a black and white version of your image because it's not going to work very well. The better way, let me show you how to do the better way. The only way, actually there is only one way to do this. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to get the same result, but the best way to do it is just go create a solid color. Push your mouse anywhere against the left edge to create a gray. We don't care what color gray it is as long as its S is a 0 here. And then you're going to change it to any of these 3 on the bottom. Hue, saturation, or color. They're the same thing. Not luminosity. That's a different thing. There we go. Now we get the result that we expect because these modes use hue, saturation, and brightness, not hue, saturation, and lightness. So now that we have that established, let's go back to the image. Does her face look believable with the rest of this image? And that's where we need to fix it. So we're gonna use a curve. Curves are nice because we have this bottom end. This is the black. How much black is we're moving it into the data of the image here. By the way, we can clip it so it's only affecting her face. So how much black or how much gray. So if you move this straight across, you get 50% gray. So if you ever wonder where that comes from. So is there a true black in this image anywhere? Maybe. We can actually use this black point and try and find a black point and say this is actually a black here. And then we can use this white point and say, well, the brightest part of the image is probably right here in her face, or on this part here. And that's supposed to be pretty good. I think that's okay. I actually wanted a little bit less black. So we're going to raise the darkest dark up a bit. You could also do with this and just kind of sample around the image, but I'm happy you're doing it this way. By the way, this auto can work, but if you hold down your Alt and click on it, you have different options for what you can do with auto, and the way that auto works. Sometimes this is actually the better option than this one. So I tend to use this one more, but I trust my eyes a lot on this kind of stuff. So I'm just going to raise the darkest up a bit and then raise the brightness slightly. So something like this. So the idea is, does this look like it's a legit dark and light? They work together. One isn't like very bright and one isn't very dark. This is important because this part is a part that a lot of people skip. It doesn't matter that, yes, her skin is brighter or darker here, but does this look like it fits? And I think it does. It's good enough, right? So then now it's done. We can actually just throw that away. You can actually keep it too. We can do another trick with it here. Now let's look at the chroma, which is the actual colors. And to do that, we can actually use this gray layer again, and we can set it to luminosity. And what this does is it shows us all of the colors that are on this in this piece. So we see this, and this is very hard to look at. I know it is. Let me increase this. I'm just going to add a curve to the image and squish it in. So that'll make it a whole lot more obvious what's going on here. Okay. So from this standpoint, does her face look like this? Oh, well, no, it's totally wrong. So let's fix it. I'm going to add I use color balance is what I use here. I'm looking for one tool that does the whole thing. I don't want to sit here all day long and fiddle with this. I want to do it once and be done with it. If you hold on your Alt key and click here, that will change it to being only her face. I tend to start in the shadows and say, can I adjust the shadows so they look the same as the shadows in the rest of the image? And this involves a lot of wiggling of controls. Now this may or may not work. We may have to adjust it once we come out and look at the image once this is turned off. So that's our shadows. What about midtones? Trying to adjust the midtones of the image. And the highlights. I may have been too aggressive with the midtones there and the shadows. Let's start over here. I'm not worried about the lips. Midtones are kind of like in her eyebrows there, and the highlights. So that looks a little bit better. So again, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but let's find out. I'll turn this off, and that's pretty good, actually. So the last thing we need to do is we need to adjust the saturation. And saturation is, unfortunately, we do need to use this hue and saturation tool. The other thing we can do is we can add the opposite side of the color wheel. So if you're like, well, I don't want to use that thing, could you show me that's evil? Ooh, I didn't need to use that one. You can do it with a curve. Curves are probably the most important part of Photoshop. So if we go to blues here, if we add blues, and we can add different levels of things to try and counter the yellow, because this is yellow down here, so you're adding the opposite. But this is pretty fiddly, and we already know that we have the color pretty much where we want it, so let's just use hue and saturation, and again, only on her face, and try and desaturate it a bit. So we should come up with something that gets close, and it may not be perfect, but it's close. I like to zoom out and kind of look at it from a distance and see how it looks. It's pretty good. Now we can like go in and dial in any nuances we need to make here. So, any questions anybody has? Ionis is saying that always use relax mode. Yeah, I use relax all day long. It's nice because I don't feel like I'm freaking out about the bill I'm going to get at the end of the month, or that I can't make more images suddenly, which would make me sad. Okay, so this strategy is the same whether we're adding 15 elements or one element. This step, these processes are always the same. You have three things you have to pay attention to: your value, your saturation, and your chroma, or your color. That's it. I mean, once you're done with that, then you get it. Now, you may go, well, that doesn't look so great, Scott. It's not quite perfect. That's okay. We need to get it close, And you can fiddle with this. This, by the way, is completely non-destructive, right? So we can work on this for a long time, and it's okay if it's not perfect. I wanted to touch my pen and my tablet so it doesn't turn off. Okay, so the secret to this whole thing is once we're done kind of combining these, and obviously we haven't combined it totally, but to give you an idea, when we're going to get this closer to done, we're going to start to add our overall finishes. So I do most of this in Capture One, but I could do it in here as well. So if I'm at the top and I'm affecting the entire image, let's say I add a little contrast, the more of these types of effects that are added to the entire image, the more these are going to blend together and become less obvious that they're from different pieces of art. Because we've gotten it so close, the more operations you do to them as a group when you leave. So that's why I always do the contrast adjustment later. If I want to do any colorizing, I do that later. I do all those steps later, not at the beginning, because you need them to help sell that they're a family. All right, so now let's work on kind of combining this together. This looks good enough for what I want to do. So I'm going to do is I'm going to Command or Control Shift E, which is going to take everything and make it one layer. So this is called Stamp Visible, so which means these things here are simply are a reference. Asylum, is that right? If you upscale or roll a new version of another person's MidJourney image, do you own the newly generated images? I would assume so, because the noise value is different for each person. So every time you re-roll it, it's your images. But that's, I don't know, that's kind of like saying, hey, look, we have two very similar cars and I made mine and you made yours. I mean, it's not really bragging rights, is it? Make your own art, I guess, is the way I look at it. Okay, so actually, let's back this up. I'm going to use, I still want to work with this mask. So let's perfect this mask a bit. It's because it's not quite what I want it to be, but it's close. So I'm just going to go in and you can, if you hit your slash key above the enter key, it turns the mask so you can see what you're doing. So if you're wondering, by the way, your alt right click is your softness and hardness here. You won't see me go up and use that bracket keys and all because that's too slow. Again, this is what I do all day long, and I don't have time to go out and go up and touch these keys and go up and fiddle with this stuff. I do use those, but I try and avoid it if possible. So I'm just doing right now is going and saying, what is the majority of this look like? And then we'll go in and we'll perfect it. But I want to rough it in real quick first. And this is all fine. I might want this here. Just a soft transition. We're going to change this whole thing anyway, but just from a strategy standpoint, I want to start with it. Do I need her ear? I don't know that I need her ear. Okay, so now we have that done. That looks much better. We have a little bit of a light gap here, looks like. It's actually in the image, so that is part of the image. But that's visually distracting, and it makes it look like we missed something. So once we start to kind of perfect this mask, we're going to have to go back and get rid of that, because even though it's not, even though it's legit, it's not going to work out real well for us. Okay, that's better. I'm just going to kind of soften this here a bit, so this we don't have that dark color there. And someone upscaling my images and wondering that question. Yeah. I've seen people do that too, and they say go in and steal prompts, but I think to upscale someone else's image is a little rude. But, you know, to get rid of that, like I do, I use private mode. So everything I do is set to private. I just do that because that way my art is my own art. I'm the same way though, like when I'm at a photography conference and there's a bunch of people shooting the same exact model, I tend to not photograph that. I don't need that same exact picture. Okay, so let's talk about strategy here. We can't have eyebrows, right? Because the statue won't have eyebrows, but we don't need whatever train wreck that is. So we're going to borrow from that here. She can't have eyebrows. So. Do I like that? No, maybe. Maybe. And I don't want to get rid of all the skin. We're going to show you what we're going to do that in a second. That maintains believability, so we got to work with that. Oops. This looks a little weird on this side. I think I like her real eye better than whatever that was, that grumpy look. Yeah, that's much better. But we can't keep the eyebrows. Now, obviously it looks a little soft in here, and that's okay, because remember, we have the upscaled version here. So when we want to add more detail, we'll have that ability. But right now I just want to work with it, just kind of rough it in. Yeah, if you enable private mode, then you won't see those things. Plus, I work with the bot directly. So if you look inside of my thing, I'm talking directly to the MidJourney bot. I am not working in one of the rooms inside of MidJourney. I just, I don't need to look at everyone else's work, and they don't need to look at mine. I get to share on here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just combine all that together. So I just Command Alt Shift E, which again takes all that away. Now I still have this. So if I put a mask on this behind this, so if I draw black on there, you can see we have the high detailed version of this behind her. So I'm doing is I'm poking holes through this to get to that. So I can do things like in here, I can increase the detail here. But I don't have to increase it everywhere. Like I don't need everything to look better. I mentioned the importance of lighting being the same for all images. I see you have taken the photo to match MidJourney image. It's possible to set direction of lighting MidJourney. You know, you can suggest it to it, but you know, just like anything else, there's a challenge in MidJourney to get it to generate a picture of 3 baskets that contain 3 different kinds of fruit, and no one has been able to do that. So to ask it to light something specifically, you can. I've done it. I've said lit from above on some of my example images, but good luck if it's good luck trying to get it to do that if it can't generate 3 baskets of fruit, right? So that's kind of my thoughts there. So I'm just borrowing pieces of this, depending on how it looks. I'm toggling between black and white on my mask to get different parts that I may or may not enjoy here. And I'm using a really big soft brush because it doesn't create the hard transition. Because I'm like, this is what the mask looks like. It's not sane, but you can't tell that by looking at it from this direction, right? This distance. Okay, that's pretty good. And I'll show you why I'm doing these things in this order, because her skin still looks wonky, but we're not done with this at all. So I'm just going to introduce some of this detailing through here, I think. I like this over here, but not that one that comes across the cheek. I think I like that. So I'm going to keep her chin the way it is. Oh, studio light, it could be, but that could be anything. My studio has a lot of lights. Right, I'm going to cover this part up. I don't like what's going on there. It's like a different color coming through. It's pretty good. We can also flip it. That's Control H. Sometimes flipping an image makes things obvious that you were missing the first time. It's a very old trick. So yeah, all I'm doing is poking holes through the soft version, which looks like this, to get to the hard version, which is farther down the stack here. And I'm not worried about the skin yet. We're going to do that in a second. So I'm just worried about this part right now. X toggles between black and white, so that's why I'm able to switch between whether I'm using the mask or not using the mask. Yeah. Alright, that's good enough for what we're doing here. Alright. Alright, so once we got that done, now we need to separate we need what's called frequency separate, which means I want to separate the color from the texture. A lot of people are like, frequency separation sucks. It doesn't suck. It doesn't do anything. If you just look at, like, I'll frequency separate it. I have an action that does this. The action's available for free, by the way. I have it. I don't know if I have it in this video. It might still be at the bottom of this video, but in any other video I put on this channel, it's available for free if you want to grab it. Of course, you can always donate too, and that's always appreciated. So it's just skin retouching base, and all it does is frequency separate, which means I need to find the frequency that doesn't have her skin texture. So it looks like 5, maybe 6. 6 looks good. So I'm just looking here, and we're looking for that. So frequency separation is a strategy for separating the color and the texture. That's all it does. It doesn't do any sort of retouching. So people who say frequency separation sucks are wrong, because it doesn't do anything. What happened there, people? My God, Becky. What's going on? You know what? Let's undo that. Something went horribly wrong, because we shouldn't see any change. Was it when I grouped it? You know what I did when I grouped it? I think I grabbed something that was bad. Nope, let's redo it. And that's the other thing about this is nice, is that it's non-destructive. So I'm actually gonna make a. I'm going to start this way, because I think maybe having that mask attached to it was my undoing. So we'll do it this way. We'll use 6 again, because we already know that value works. Okay, so all it does is separate the color and put the color in the texture. It's non-destructive. So if we zoom in here and we turn the frequency separation on and off, you can see it didn't do anything. So it doesn't wreck an image. So everyone who says that is wrong. It's what you do with it that makes it stupid. Because people will ham-handedly use this, and it's not smart. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off texture, and we're going to start with only color here. And we need to fix this. So I'm just going to grab the healing tool, and my goal is to make it so this all seems like it's kind of singing from the same hymn here, right? I'm just using my J, and I'm alt-clicking and sampling this. I'm trying to spread this color so that it looks more legit. It's blurry because I turned the textures off. They're not being used right now, and they're just distracting to look at, so I'm just turning them off. I'm just kind of doing this little bit of texture subtlety. Oops. Subtlety. And it's okay if it looks a little wonky. We got another thing we're going to do here in a bit. I'll fix that. But we want to, again, rough it in. The idea here is that we make subtle changes to things. We try and rush this and do it all very quickly. It's going to look like ass. So, and not a good ass, a bad ass. Not a badass in the way a good badass would be a badass. What a complicated sentence that just was. Right, so same thing here. I'm just retouching her skin quickly by sampling from other areas of the skin. I don't want it to be perfectly smooth. I think the believability is in some of the skin texture being there when we're done with this. So we're going to actually kind of spread that about. Having difficulty with that a little bit. This is probably the most time-consuming part of this. I mean, aside from strategy, you know, you want to figure out what it is you're going to shoot, what image you want to make, and then make it. I have quite a bit of body painting that I've done that I need to actually make something out of. So I think I'm going to do a few of those as MidJourneys as well, because MidJourney doesn't do nudes, so that's fine, because I'm going to be replacing the body with the body that I painted. But those are going to be members only videos, so if you're not a member of this channel, check out the big shiny join button down below. You get a free texture every month, a painterly texture that I've made that you can use however you'd like to use. And you support the channel, and you get your name all over my fancy patron page, which is, hang on, let me turn it on for a second. These people. And then all the other people get textures and Capture One stuff and whatever. So once again, appreciate everyone hanging out with me. I'm going to hit save because I haven't done that. And I'm going to ditch. This was the old version I had done before my test. So I say call it a test. I wasn't actually going to do this image. I was going to do another image, but this one turned out. And I think it's easy enough for everyone to kind of understand what's going on. So it's a good place to start. Figure out what am I doing there, because this color is still wonky, but we're going to use this here, I think. Use a clone stamp here and come at it from the other side. If you use a clone stamp, the blurriness of the clone stamp has to match the image, otherwise it looks a little weird. So. Kind of a try it, fail, try again, fail again. Okay, let's back up. So that's looking a lot better. We do have a few other places in here we need to just zoom out and take a look at it. Again, we're not done with this. We have one other pass that'll be a little bit more complicated. If you have any questions or thoughts, throw them in the comments. If you have been liking this video, take a minute and click that darn like button. I really appreciate it. That's like clapping, and it lets me know that you want more videos like this. Otherwise, we'll not do anymore. Right? I can do this without you. So I'm just fixing this area under here a little bit. By the way, we can, between this color and this texture layer here, we can do anything. So I might put another layer in here and grab this color, and you can paint with a really low flow. So we can go in and we can kind of brighten this up, because we're just dealing with the color at this minute. We're not dealing with the texture. So anything we want to do here, we can do. So if there's a problem area, we can fix it. There's a little bit of paint. Something like that. That's pretty good. All right, now let's throw the texture on here and see what that looks like. So we can see where the texture starts and stops. This texture layer is difficult to look at if you're looking at it like this. Sometimes I will put a curve on it just for a minute to help me see. So if you do something like this and then turn everything else off, then we can kind of see what it is we've done. Like now we can see the texture in her face and where there's no texture in the rest of the document. Well, we need to fix that. The texture should be consistent, right? So we can do that. I'm going to take this and duplicate it, by the way, and turn it off just in case I screw this up. I can go back because I'm going to be pretty aggressive here. So I have this set to 100% flow because that's the way I roll. Whenever you're working on texture, always set it to 100% flow and always work with a hard brush. A soft brush will give unconvincing results. So I'm just going to kind of add this texture up in through here. Oops. And I might add some, I might actually break my own rule and actually make this a softer brush. Do that. I was trying to think of a strategy that would work best. I think a softer brush is better here. Because this all needs to have texture, right? Otherwise it doesn't look legit. This is all fine. Just retouching her skin a little bit while we're in here. This is all the imperfections in the texture layer of her skin. She has great skin. She's an awesome model. Awesome singer, by the way. She's one of these people that if she gets in the right city, she's going to be going someplace. Wonderful. Wonderful lady. All right, so let's turn this, get rid of this thing, and turn this back to just linear light. Oops, we don't need that one. We need to see this on top of it. So you can see now that we have skin texture that kind of goes up into here. Now, I don't necessarily need that. Like it looks a little too forced. But we now that we have it, now we can back it down. So the way you back this down is we need a gray. This is just gray, right? So if I grab my brush tool and I'm just going to paint with 50% gray. So let's go over here and set it to 50%, 0. That was just a totally lucky guess that I hit that. It doesn't matter what color this is, but as long as its brightness is 50 and the saturation is 0, you know you're shooting gray. And when you're doing that, anything dark goes in and anything bright pushes out. That's kind of the way to look at it. Actually, what this layer is doing is anything darker is a multiply and anything brighter is a screen. So if you want to be technical about it, that's what that's doing. But I want to do is I have a 1% flow, and I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over this texture with this gray. So what this doing is it's dampening the texture. So if we look at it while we're working on the image here, if I'm working on just the texture, make sure texture copies off. I'm removing this texture because I'm taking it away, because I'm flattening out the gray that's in there. So then we should have a nicer transition of what looks like skin texture that's closer to the camera, but yet the depth of field says that I shouldn't be able to see the skin of her, the head of her, the texture of her skin way in the back of her head here. So this is a little slow for me. If you hold down your Alt key when you adjust this, it gets a lot slower. So if you're in St. Louis around April next year, I'll be there. Piximperfect in MidJourney oftentimes comes to that event as well, so you can see the two of us together. Oops. With the wrong darn button. By the way, if it ever does that to you, that's the caps lock key. It gives you the precision cursor. So if you're sitting there going, what the hell is going on? It's that precision cursor. So this just kind of knocking the texture back a bit because she is kind of a sculpture, but I do want the texture to be there. So once I get the texture the way that I want it, I can go back and adjust exactly how much texture do I need to really see to sell this illusion. Right. That looks pretty good to me. Right, so we don't need that anymore because we didn't screw it up. So that's pretty good. All this stuff is discard eligible. Hit save. All right, now I need to kind of fix this. There's some lumpiness or some wonkiness in here, so we're going to fix that. We're going to do that with dodge and burn. So I do this. I have my own way of doing this. I basically just take a curve and pull it up like this, just a bit, and that comes with a mask automatically. I'm going to turn that mask off for Control I. Then I'm going to add another one, and that curve here is I'm just going to pull that down, and I'm again turn that off, Control I. I like the bottom. I like this one to be on the bottom. So this is our dodge. And this is our burn. And we can use these to kind of do what we want to do. So for example, if I'm on the dodge layer and I'm painting on the mask, if I scribble on here, it's going to make everything under that cursor lighter as I work. And you see that indeed did work. And the same thing with the burn. Anything that's on this layer that I go over and over and over is going to stop doing this. What's the difference between flow and opacity? That's actually one of the reasons why I think people kind of have trouble with Photoshop. Is these two things are hugely different. Flow is kind of like a spray can. So if I'm working on a layer here, let's use pick like a red, and I'm just working with this brush. You understand how this works, right? It's a spray can. You're spraying spray paint, right? And over time, and I'm just holding the brush down and painting it, and it eventually will reach 100% that. Well, let's go back. So a lot of people use Photoshop this way. They use 100% flow. In fact, they don't even play with flow at all. And then you should go, well, I'm just going to make a 10% opaque thing here. Oh, and I'm going to use another 10% over here. That'll look good. And then we'll have a 10% over here. Well, this weird area here is not 20% plus 20% but 20%. It's this bizarre 20% more than the other 20% that was there. And you have these weird transitional spots. If we do this with a hard brush, it's more obvious. So every time I go over it, I end up with this overlapping train wreck. And this is really hard to troubleshoot because you got to go back and say, well, I'm just I just want to use this you know, and you're trying to fix it. So I never use opacity. It's almost always flow because everybody gets this. It's a spray can. So that's the difference, and that's the reason why you'll always see this at 100% and 1, usually. Sometimes 2, but usually 1. I rarely modify opacity. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to draw on this layer with a low flow. Again, because the idea is I can show it or I can hide it. And it's just a curve, so it's adjusting what's already there. But what I want to do is I want to get rid of this kind of wonky, it's like you can see it's kind of like a strange bumpiness, especially because it's kind of brighter in here than darker in here. I need to fix that. So the way that I fix that is we're going to color on these 2 layers and kind of darken and lighten it, but it's difficult to see what the hell we're supposed to be doing. So we need to fix that, and we're going to use that same trick again. We're going to use a solid color, a gray, set to one of these 3. Now we did this earlier. This is the only way to make a true value in Photoshop. So again, solid color adjustment layer, any gray, that means S is 0. That means it's a gray. And we don't care where, we don't care about any of this. It just as long as this S is a 0. Set that to any of these 3 and you're fine. All right, that's fine, but that didn't really help us. Well, what if we put a curve on it? And now we torque the crap out of this thing. Okay. Now, can you see the blotchiness in her forehead? Well, yeah. Okay, well, let's go fix it since we can see it, right? So I'm just going to go into my dodge layer here. Again, very low flow. And I'm going to do, and this can take some time. By the way, this is the way that a full-time professional retoucher that works for like a really big magazine, this is how they retouch images. This is the dodge and burn retouching technique. It is very time consuming. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this today because I don't need this to be a finished piece of art, but I am going to get most of this done, and it won't take me very long because I do this a lot. But you could easily spend a whole day in here, and the closer you zoom in, the more work you've got. If you're in like this, you're gonna be like, oh well, I need to do all these little pieces over here now, and you just stop, back up. Otherwise, you're married to that image, right? And then your wife leaves you, and you're still working on that. It's 20 years later, still working on the same image. Everyone's like, where did Jimmy go? Oh, he's retouching a picture. Oh, okay. Let's go have beer. So you just want to get rid of this lumpiness. So if we turn this on and off, you can see what I've done so far. It looks like this. It's not very thrilling. But the idea is you want to darken and lighten so they all kind of look like their neighbors. They don't have to be perfect, but this gets rid of that scary transition when we first started this and people are like, well, how are you going to make that head blend into the head around you? Well, this is one of those secrets right here. There is no quick way to do this, right? There's no magical, super quick way. There are some pretty great programs out there. I own one of them. It's Retouch for Me, Dodge and Burn. It's pretty good. It's not as good as what I do by hand, but if this is a small picture that's going in an album for a client, then that's good enough. But if it's a big thing that's hanging on a wall, no, it gets the full treatment here. So I'm just trying to get rid of this blotchiness a little bit. Under these extreme circumstances, a super aggressive curve and so on, we're getting this so that it looks a lot smoother, right? So when we turn that curve off, this should look a lot better, and it won't look as blotchy as it did before, because it was pretty darn blotchy and it drove me a little wacky. So again, don't get caught up in spending years in here, and try not to zoom in. But if you do, then be prepared to spend some time. Get a sandwich, have a friend call you, make sure you're okay every so often. It's a little blocky up in here. I don't know what's going on up there, but we're not going to worry too much about that. That's not something that's going to come, obviously, to an issue. All right. Thanks everybody for hanging out with me today, by the way. If you haven't clicked the like button and you're liking the stream, give me a clap. That's what you're doing. It makes everybody else go, hey, there's something on that everyone thinks doesn't suck right now. Let's go watch that. Okay, and then when I get that part done, I move my curve so I can get to another area of her face. Kind of see what I'm doing. Just working my way around to get rid of any of this blotchiness that is hanging there. And you obviously you take as much time on this as you want. If you want to do this step and you're fine with it being blotchy and you're like good enough, or if the head is small in the frame, that's also fine. Because if it's a small head in the frame, this blotchiness is not going to show up, right? By definition, it's going to be tiny. And I don't want to get rid of these bags under the eyes completely because the eye is an orb and it's in a hole. If you get rid of it, the person's going to look really not healthy. And one more here. You kind of got to learn to ignore everything else in the image when you're working this way. Sometimes it's very difficult for people. They're like, well, all I can see is the blown out part of the image. Look past it. I'm just working down in here. Okay, that should be good. So we turn that stuff off. Now we should have a nicely melded together version. Here's our dodge and burn. That's what we did. Put these together. That's exactly what we did. It's subtle, but it's the difference between, yeah, it's pretty good and damn, that's awesome. Are these techniques used a lot in photo bashing? Absolutely they are. Dodge and burn is a critical part of photo bashing. Photo bashing is where you're taking multiple images and smashing them together, or using one image and smashing it together multiple times. I photo bash a lot of stuff. I am going to go back to this color layer here and put a little bit more on her nose here. I think her nose, we lost a bit of that in the transition to Photoshop here. I think I should have toned it down a bit. I'm just going to do that because this is, again, non-destructive. We can go and change this stuff around as much as we'd like. Oops, except for those two layers there. We don't need these anymore. That looks pretty dang good. All right, so now let's finish it. So let's do some color grading on it. And I would do this normally in Photoshop, but we can do it here in Photoshop. I'm sorry, we do this normally in Capture One. We can do it here in Photoshop. So we'll just go and we'll grab a curve because curves are awesome sauce. And we can use the auto. Again, if you hold on Alt and tap on that, we can have it kind of do its own thing. Per channel enhancement here might be decent, but you can kind of give it a quick look and feel as to what one you're looking for. I think this one, maybe. I think I like that one better. So that, we can go back and click on the auto button. And it looks like it's already set because we had autoed this earlier, I think. All right, we're going to leave the curve here because we may want that. And now let's use a really easy one. Let's use color lookup. So color lookup, let's use a LUT. And LUTs are basically presets that are done across multiple types of adjustment layers. And I'm using the up and down scroll wheel here on my mouse. So if you're wondering how I'm doing this, oh, you can see my hand. That's right. So, by the way, this is a 3D mouse. If you're wondering what the hell this thing is. I do a lot of Blender and Adobe Substance, and they use that mouse. So I'm just kind of looking through here for something. I think I like this drop blues one. Fall colors is nice. That's kind of bleak. Aptly named, foggy night. Futuristic bleak. Oh, I like that one. I like that one a lot. So let's stay with that one, right? And I'm gonna take this curve, and is there anything we need to do? I like to lift the black up. I don't want a true black anywhere in the image, so I try to just lift this up a little bit. Something like this, maybe. That looks pretty good. So that's a very basic way to kind of photo bash these things together, or to make them look. See, we came from, where are we? Way down here. We came from this picture of Sabrina. This one. Which again, I took this after I'd already found the piece of art that I wanted to use. So I found this piece of art, or made this piece of art. I want to say, did I find it? Did it already exist and I just typed in the words that it happened to pop it up? Maybe. So I found this. This is the light upscale. So if you're new to the tool, that's the light upscale redo versus the max which is this one. This is the max version. You can see it added all this stuff. This is version 2, by the way. So version 3 is a little bit shinier about the way that these things work. So don't be so scared about max anymore. But again, having the light upscale redo is nice because you can see we chose where we wanted to include or exclude different details, right? And then this is her face, and I just scaled it so it would get there. And then we worked our way through. We did, first of all, we'll start this. So we took her head and we masked it out. And we didn't want the eyebrows because this thing doesn't have hair that I could tell. And then we kind of figured out what we needed, and then we adjusted the black and whiteness of the image. We adjusted the color balance of the image, and then we adjusted the saturation. So if you missed this part, this is probably the critical part of the video that talks about how to make all this stuff work. So if you're wondering, there you go. And we're going to put that in a folder. Once that was done, then we went back and we figured out what parts of the detailed image we wanted to have show. We have another one up here somewhere blocking that. There we go. So what parts we wanted to have show or not show. So you see we went with some of it. We didn't go with the whole upscale redo. Obviously not having that messed up face in there was helpful, but I did like some of the details in through here. And then we frequency separated this. So that means that we take and we separate the color and the texture. And then we added in a bit of additional paint here. You can see this layer is just barely there. It's just paint from a regular brush thrown in there. And then we, at the end, went up and we dodged and burned it, which makes all the difference in the world to the polish of the image. This, by the way, this step is the difference between a good photographer and a great photographer. So if you are a photographer and you're trying to impress your clients, this step right here, this dodge and burn thing, that's the difference right there. As I say, I do this full time, and this is the difference. This is why people come to me and they pay my rate. It isn't that hard to learn. So just take your time to do it. And then color lookup, we just kind of, again, anything you can do against the entire layer stack helps marry or sell the image as looking more convincing, right? So take your time to do the whole darn, do the stack, do this stuff on top of the stack last. And lastly, we put a curve on here as well. We could also do a hue and saturation if we wanted to kind of modify, cool or warm the image up a bit. I kind of like the red lips look, by the way. I don't mind that at all. So if you're wondering why we're using that, something like this, I think that looks pretty darn good. But anyway, hey, thanks for hanging out with me. If you liked this stream, I'm going to do these more often if people liked it. So click the like button. Let me know you liked it. If you subscribe, that'd be great. I will put this document up for the members. We have what we call a channel professional. This document will go up there for you. So if you want this Photoshop document for reference, along with a whole bunch of other ones that are already up there, you can get that by joining the channel. There's a big shiny join button down below. That's what I have for today. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comments and I'll try and get to them. I'm pretty good about answering most people's comments and stuff, but I plan to do more of these mashups where I'm taking photography I've shot and then MidJourney imagery and combining them together to kind of create a finished piece of art. So hopefully these techniques make sense to you. Some of them are ones that I've kind of invented or nuanced over time. Otherwise, they're industry standard and a lot of people use them. So everybody take